Hey everybody, wanted to do a quick little video on hand tools. And I'm going to be covering hand tools as far as it comes to automotive. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. All right. So we're going to be talking, like I said, we're going to be talking about hand tools when it comes to the automotive world. So my objectives, kind of what I wanted you to take away from this is I want to kind of compare the different types of wrenches that are out there. It's not one wrench in one, size. There is a variety of different wrenches out there. Also want to get into talk about the ratchets and sockets and talk about extensions and some screwdrivers, get into hammers, mallets, and pliers. And then kind of go into some cutters, punches, chisels, different. I want to get into a little bit about different types of removers and hacksaws, getting into some basic tools that you should have in your toolbox, and then get into the specialty tools. And then follow up with some safety and some maintenance on hand tools. So your wrenches start off in a mold, and this is a mold of a wrench right here. And this wrench is not finished. It will be going through the rest of the process, and then it'll be chromed, and then it'll be sized and stamped in the size. There are different types of wrenches out there. This is what they call an open-end wrench. You'll notice it has a 15-degree angle to it. This angle makes it easier to actually fit on the bolt or the fastener, and then it gives it a little bit more of a leverage for the technician. This one has a 1/2 inch on one side and a 9/16 on the other side. This is very common on open-end wrenches. They'll have one size on one end and one size on the other. Now, I do want to note that this particular wrench is what they call customary standard. There's different categories. There's different types of wrenches out there, and we could have metric or customary standard. There's some other different types of wrenches out there, different categories, but I won't go too deep into that because we're really going to focus on the automotive world. And you'll find that most of the automotive, it's a pre-1975. You're going to find most of it is in the US customary standard, or if it's past 1975 is when they started going into the metric more and more and more. And it was kind of I wouldn't say a phase in, but my toolbox actually has both in them. And you'll find some of the kits come with both sizes in them also. But this is an open-end wrench. What we have right here is a box-in wrench. And this box-in wrench it gives more leverage. It really helps with a really tight bolt or nut, and it makes it easier for you to give a little bit of leverage on it too. And like I said, this is a box in, and then there's what they call a combination wrench. The combination wrench is very common. Let's put it that way. You buy your kits and stuff like that with the different sizes. Generally, they'll have a box in on one side and an open in on the other side. And these will match in sizes. The open end will be like a 1/2 inch, and the box end will be a 1/2 inch. Then you have your adjustable wrenches. The adjustable wrenches is not really what I use that often, because the adjustable wrenches, if you look at this dial right here, this thumb dial right here, this is what it adjusted, larger or smaller. The problem with the adjustable wrenches are they can actually slip, and they can round over your different types of fasteners if you're trying to use them. Generally, the only time I really use adjustable wrenches is when I gotta bend a piece of sheet metal, and I'll use it that way. And that's pretty much most of what I use it for. I want to emphasize that you need to get the right type of tool for the work. If you try to shortcut or you try to get it to where, I'll adapt this to it. This is going to get you in a, either going to damage the work that you have or the projects you have, or it could actually get yourself hurt. So just be very careful when you're sizing up the tool for the work. This is what they call a line wrench. Some people call it a pipe. Well, not a pipe wrench. Pipe wrench is a whole different thing. But a line wrench is for like brake lines, fuel lines, this kind of stuff that use power steering lines too. That you have a tubing affair going into a connector, and you want to put a lot of force onto it, but you don't want to round it over. So that's what its main focus is, not to allow you, try to not to allow you to round over that fitting like that. So this is what they call a line wrench, This is a ratchet that goes with your sockets. The ratchet comes in different sizes. You could have a 1/2 inch drive on it. So this section right here is the drive. And then you have the socket that connects to it, and then the socket will have different output sizes on it too. This ratchet is directional, so you can actually change it to where it goes in one direction or the other. What's really nice about that is you can actually ratchet it across to tighten it up, and then get a little more, so it gets you a little bit of playroom to go through, and you don't have to just change like you would a wrench and bring it up, put it to another direction, bring it up, and go into another direction. So it makes it a lot nicer and convenient. And you'll attach your sockets, which will have the same drive size, and you'll also attach your extensions. And your extensions will be right in between your socket and also your drive of your ratchet. Now, you could buy the extensions, and sometimes they come in kits with a couple different sizes and different sizes. And you can get really long extensions too. I have one that's almost as tall as I am when I was doing a lot of transmission work at one time. Now, this is a flex bar, or sometimes we'll call it a breaker bar. And this is really good for really tight work. And you want to be careful. Well, let's put it this way. If you use your ratchet like that, and you put too much force on the ratchet, you could damage the little gear inside the ratchet. And then you have to replace the ratchet, or you have to actually repair that ratchet. So it's best, it's really, really tight. You get yourself a hold of a flex bar or a breaker bar to do that way. Like I started to say, there's different sizes of socket drives, and this is a good example right here. Some common sizes. Actually, they don't have the 3/4 tube, which you might use on some of the automotive applications. But a 1/4 inch right here, so that's the square, it's the 1/4 inch, here's a 3/8, and then here's a 1/2 inch. So your 1/4 inch is going to be on for your lighter stuff. And then when you get into the most common, which is used for almost everything hand-wise, you're going to have the 3/8 drive. And then when you go into the bigger stuff, like you're working on bigger fasteners, you want to go into a 1/2 inch with a 1/2 inch ratchet on it. So each size has its own little ratchet you could actually use. The sockets come in different socket points, and the best one to have for most work is the 6 point. There are some 12 point applications some of your exhaust manifold bolts, some of the intake manifold bolts would have, a 12 point that you would have to have with it. Most, what I've seen in a lot of socket sets they have a 12 point, which it makes it a little more convenient for them to stamp out the 12 points, whereas you almost have to go find the 6 point sockets. But if you have something that's really tight, you want to be careful with using a 12 point socket, because this can actually possibly round over. You get a little bit of wear on that the bolt or that nut, it may round it over when you put a lot of pressure on it. So you just be careful on it. And then there's also the crow's foot. This is for, just similar to your line wrenches, but this would actually give you can put on an end of an extension. Say you had to go down to loosen up a pipe down a kind of tight area that you can't really get your line wrench into. You can take your crow's foot with a long extension and go down and loosen it up that way. So that's another possibilities too. All right, so on torque wrenches, these are the devices that you're actually going to be using to make sure the fastener has enough torque, which sounds funny, but you have enough of actually twisting force. That's what the word I'm looking for, twisting force on a fastener. When you tighten down a fastener, what happens is when it kind of seats on the other piece of work, when you're pushing things together and holding things together, you're actually putting force or friction force on the surface, and you're taking and stretching the threads on that actual, stud or that bolt to give it enough tension that it's going to stay in place. If you use a ratchet just to tighten it down that way, you really don't know how much force you have on it, how much torque. So you need to get accustomed to using a torque wrench to actually tighten all your nuts and bolts down. All your fasteners need to be torqued down. And there's a torque for every fastener on a vehicle, engine-wise and all. There are different types of torque wrenches. The clicker type, which is in the picture you have right here. There's a beam type, and also there's a dial type. And I don't have a picture right now of an actual digital type one. They actually have digital ones that you can actually program in. And then the torque wrench will actually go ahead and vibrate and beep at you when you get to that force, which is really nice when you're getting to some areas that you can't really see that well. But you want to be very careful when you're using a torque wrench too, because there's some care you need to do with it. Like this torque wrench you have right here, you want to make sure that after you've used it, so the way that clicker type works is there's either a flip lever or a lock to where you will unlock the torque wrench, and then you'll actually dial it down to the specified torque you want. And the torque can be in foot-pounds or pound-feet, or it could be in a metric measurements too. So you've got the two side. A lot of torque wrenches will have both on it, and one side is the standard, and in other words, in meters are in I believe it's kilograms. No, that would be an actual weight. But anyway, well, that is correct. But anyways, what you'll do is you'll dial it in and you'll lock it, and then you'll run it down to that specific torque, and then it's going to go ahead and click. It'll click. Okay. When it clicks, that means, hey, I'm at that actually twisting force, and I'm good to go. You'll go around through all your nuts and bolts as you do it that way too. Now, if you're torquing down a wheel on a car, you want to make sure, and you want to make this kind of a habit, head bolts. Any kind of bolts you're going to be torquing down, you want to go in a crisscross and on a pattern on a wheel. So you're going to go from one side here, then one side here. We'll get more into this when we go into wheels and tires, but you want to go across, cross, cross that way. That way it pulls down the wheels nice and straight. If you just go all the way around in circles like this, what can happen is it can actually twist a little bit, and now all of a sudden you have a wheel that is out of, not torqued down evenly, and there's all kinds of nasty, it could possibly have the wheel come off. So yeah, this is a beam type. This is a clicker type. And my next one is a beam type, which I use my beam type a lot when I'm setting up differentials, which is the rear end of, the drive end of the actual differential. So I use this beam type because it's very, very sensitive. It actually has, when you start pulling on the handle on the end here, this starts to flex. So it actually shows you what your torque is. And it's very, very sensitive. And this is what I normally use when I'm doing that. Now, the other type is actually that is actually a digital type, which actually it's just you would dial in, and it makes it really nice. Like I said before, plus sometimes on some sequence of torquing things down, they'll say torque it down to 45 foot-pounds and then add 60 degrees. Well, unless you have a degree wheel with it too, that's kind of hard to do. But on the digital, it'll go click or beam or vibrate when you get to the torque, and then you can actually go to the next stage of torque it down to the degree. So it makes it kind of nice that it's all in one type thing. And again, those will come in metric and also in a customer standard side, torques. To make sure you have your torque wrench, this is not a requirement, but this is actually how we can check to see if the torque of my wrench is accurate. And after a period of time, the torque wrenches can come out of accuracy. And what you'll either do is, if you have one of these torque checkers, you can actually check it. But when it comes to repair, a lot of times we have to send them in. My recommendation is don't get the torque checker, or if you do, have it bolted up on a wall someplace. So every once in a while you can go by and check the torque on your wrench. And then if it's out of torque, then you can send it in to have it repaired. A lot of your tool manufacturers will do it, and there's different areas that you can actually send in equipment to have it checked or repaired, and checked and repaired to make sure you keep it up to date. My recommendation is, and it really depends on how often you use your torque wrench, but my recommendation is to make sure that you send it in like once a year. You may want to send it earlier if you use it a lot. You may not. I would still say a minimum of once a year. The other thing I wanted to point out about torque wrenches, you want to make sure that you put them in a rest position. I even do it on the digital ones too. But when you're through using the torque wrench, like on your clicker type, and sometimes they can actually call them dial types too. But your clicker type, you want to make sure that you bring everything down to the 0 mark. Okay. What I mean by that is, on your clicker type, you're going to actually dial them into a torque and set it by locking it in place. And then you're going to do your torque. Well, after you're done torquing things down, take the time to unlock it and bring it down to 0 again, or the closest you can to 0. Some torque wrenches start off at, like 25 foot-pounds. If you get into the inch-pound ones too, because they have those out there too, you want to also bring them down to as close to 0 as possible. Okay, there are different types of sockets out there, what they call deep sockets and regular type sockets. So you can actually have, shallow sockets also on some tool manufacturers will sell all kinds of different depths of sockets. And depending on what kind of work you're doing, if a deep socket, you need to get down into a threaded area where the actual nut is all the way down inside and you want to get it out, you may have to have a deeper socket to do it. So depending on what kind of work you're doing. The next thing I want to talk about is screwdrivers and drivers and stuff like that. These are some common types of screwdrivers. We'll put it this way. The most common is a flat blade, or what they call a torque. The torque has this, the Phillips has this end, torque has this end, and then our flat blade ones are here. This one is actually a driver. So we use this to drive screws on when we want them super tight that we can't do with our hands, or we may use the driver also to loosen some of your drum brake systems. Had a set screw from factory, to actually keep it in place while it was being assembled. And that screw is pretty tight. It's really tight in there. You're going to have to actually take a driver like this because you may not have enough twisting force in your wrist to actually bring it out. But these are some of the most common ones. So your flats, your Phillips, which is similar to this. These are what they call stubbies. So a little palm-driven type ones too. And then you've got some offsets. The offsets have a little bit of an angle to them, so you can actually get into really tight spots too. And then, of course, our torque. Okay, this is actually a torque bit. And then also our impact. So the torque can be in different sizes, and they call them like T45s, T25s, and stuff like that to get into the size that they have. One of the things I didn't have a picture on, but I wanted to point out is some of the torques have a hole in the center, and these were considered called security torques. Early on, it was not as available to the general public to have security torque type of torque. They would only sell them to certain people. Now it's pretty much standard that most technicians will have them. Hammers and mallets. There's different types of hammers and mallets. I only have 3 up here I wanted to show you. The hammers, this is what they call a ball peen hammer right here. This ball peen hammer comes in different weights and different types of handles too. This has a wooden handle on it. And they need to be looked at and taken care of also. I would recommend all your tools to be clean before you put them back to your toolbox. When you're through with that project, just take your time to wipe it down, maybe with a little bit of cleaning solution to make sure it stays nice and greaseless like that. And then we have our mallets. These are great for a kind of soft installation. You don't want to damage anything very much. There's also brass hammers out there. Brass hammers are good for metals that are soft, and you don't want to damage the metal too much. And then you also have what they call dead blow hammers. This is actually a dead blow hammer right here. And the dead blow hammer actually has this metal piece. Now, this one's damaged, and it's a good way to look at it. It has normally has a plastic covering around over it. Now, this one, like I said, was damaged, but gives you a good idea of how this is put together. Inside here is shot, just like you have little balls, or you kind of really small ball bearings. Anyways, this is actually in there on purpose. So on a ball peen hammer, when you hit something metal, it will actually bounce a little bit. Where the dead blow hammers, because that shot kind of migrates over to the spot that you're actually driving to, it keeps it from bouncing as much. So if that's why they call it a dead blow hammer. All right. All right. Continuing on, I want to get back into it. I think I kind of bumped us out for a second there. I want to go ahead and get back in. We should be back at it again. So on our pliers, there's different types of pliers. There's what they call the slip joint type pliers, which you can actually make them larger or smaller by actually adjusting them across. And then we have the multi-groove type pliers. So yeah, your slip joints are right here, are usually your go-to standard type plier. Whereas your multi-groove pliers are for more of gripping onto things, and then you can adjust to different sizes to make it a little bit easier to use. And your needle nose pliers here, so these needle nose that need have a lot of care to them because these tips are very fragile. So if you're using them, trying to grab on something really, tightly and strong, you could actually damage the tips of the needle nose pliers. Then alignment pliers here. These alignment pliers are for cutting and also gripping, like before, like pipe grip and stuff like that. These have the ability to cut wire. Not really super strong cut or a thick wire, but stronger than other, and they can actually be used for different tasks. So alignment pliers. Then we have diagonal cutters, which you can see a lot in your electrical work and stuff like that. So these are good for cutting, like your cotter pins, cutting wire, but not getting into any kind of cables or anything like that. And this one also is used for the cotter pin to kind of adjust it to where to lock in place. Then there is a locking pliers. This is what is a locking plier. Some people call them vice grips, but they're really a vice grip is actually it is the word, but the channel lock. So some would call them channel locks, and they're not really Channel Lock is actually a company that makes pliers and all. So you want to get used to calling locking pliers. And then also there's another plier called a snap ring plier. They are, sometimes they're called locking ring pliers, and they are designed to remove an internal and external snap rings. Like I have a snap ring going into to lock in like a seal or a bearing or something like here. And then I have an external snap ring that's going to lock in a shaft to keep the shaft from moving too much back and forth. These are actually files, and there's different types of files. You've got triangular type ones, and you'll have half around. You'll have round type files. Sometimes they're called a rat tail file. And then you can actually have regular flat type files like what's shown right here. But the big thing I wanted you to take away on that is try not to use the file without the handle, because that is pretty sharp on the end. It can actually poke into you, or if you put a lot of force onto it, or it can actually cause kind of pain while you're doing it that way. The other one I wanted to get into is cutters, different types of cutters. These are some are what they call tin snips. They cut different thin tin or thin metals, or they may even called aviation snips. They can have a right hand and a left hand, or a center aviation snips. So we have different types of cutting or doing different kind of cutting work. When you get into box cutters, these are like exactly what they say. They're up to take and cut, boxes. A lot of people use it for cutting carpet, or they're cutting over open a package. Sometimes they're called, utility knives. They have replaceable blades that you can replace them with. but again, they're only used for like light type work. Your punches and chisels, this is showing an actual punch right here, and we're actually driving a pin out. You can use one to drive one in, drive one out. You also have chisels to actually cut a piece of work. It looks similar to a punch, but it has a kind of a blade on the end of it, and then you can actually drive out certain things, cut certain things off of that. The one thing I wanted to bring to your attention is that after a period of time with a punch or a chisel, the actual top of it is going to start mushrooming over. It's just a matter of time when it does that. You want to always wear safety glasses, of course, when you're using punches and chisels and all your tools. But what it can happen is it mushrooms over and you need to clean up the chamfer on it. In other words, get it back to the angle. Some of your chisels and punch come with a little gauge, so you know exactly what angle to be best for that actual punch or that chisel. Then there's also stud removers, and the stud, this is a stud remover right here, one style. There's other styles that, some are gripping a different way, but you can put it on an extension or your ratchet, and then you can actually use it because this little piece here goes in and kind of grips onto that stud, so you can actually pull the stud out that way. So you can just put it down the hole here, and then when you start twisting, it starts pulling, lock in place so you can pull that stud out. And after you've done that, you're going to have to replace the stud. You can't, it wouldn't be smart to use that stud over again. All right, and then we have nut splitters. This is a nut splitter. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to put it up against the nut, and usually it's because the nut's rounded over and you can't get a good grip on it. So you actually go and set up this tool so where it actually tightens down to where it splits the nut itself. The other tool I want to bring is some extractors. This is one style. There's other styles out there, but this is a style that's pretty common. And basically, when you get to the point where that stud cannot be, it's been broke off, maybe even flush or under flush, you're going to have to drill and this becomes really a good, a lot of skill to do this, but you're going to drill center into the actual stud, and then you're going to use one of these extractors. So you're going to drive the extractor, and it has a twist to it, so it twists the way out. So there's a special tool that goes right on the top here that connects so you can actually get it out. And fairly easy. It's just a matter of how bad that is. You may end up having to drill it out and retapping. In other words, cutting new threads on the actual piece of work that you're working on. Hopefully not. And then, of course, there are when you're looking at engines, you actually have some plugs that go into which are casting plugs. Some people call them freeze plug holes, but they're actually casting plugs. Whenever they cast a block, there actually has to have a place to kind of get the sand out. So there will be sand in different sections to make sure that it has all the channels that it needs. So these are actually coolant patches right here. So there's also a place for the camshaft on the backside of some block camshafts. This is one that's pretty common, and what they've done here is taken some wax and molded it over to help seal that. I myself tend to use Permatex and seal it that way. But either way that actually works for what you're doing is fine. And then, of course, the actually casting plug holes, and then you're going to use an actual Sometimes they call them freeze plugs, but it's actually an actual plug, an actual casting plug that you're going to actually use. There also is other types of galleys that you have to put through when you're rebuilding. You want to clean out these different passages, and they may even have an actual type of a threaded plug that goes in too. So these will actually have like a brass plug that goes over a steel plug. You'll drive them in, and I usually take some Permatex and put it around when I'm driving them in there too. Hacksaws. Now, hacksaws are great for cutting, and that's their job, but I want to give you a little insight of how to properly use a hacksaw. You want to make sure the blade, of course, is in the direction, the teeth are directed into the downward motion. And when you're cutting, you want to go ahead and put force as you go down and lift up the force as you come back. You don't want to kind of put force on both directions because you're going to overheat the blade and the teeth are going to start flaking off. Then you're going to have to continue to replace the blades. You want to take care as you go down and slowly but surely cut through that piece of work. This is a tool kit, and the hand tool kits are available out there in different manufacturers. I will be posting some tool kits that I think you should have as the weeks go along. I might even put it down in the bottom of this actual video, and this will help you get started. Now, when buying hand tools, I recommend that you start off small and build up. And what I mean by that, you can buy some of these kits pretty inexpensive, like what I have in front of me, because it comes with the ratchets, the drivers, and also some really cool stuff that you can use in general purpose. Now, when you get into the later on, when you start making money, you can actually step up and maybe keep these at home and use the other ones that work. You start off using this and then start making some money, and then you can really invest in the tools. Now this is one kit, and there's other kits out there. So I'll put some links to some kits in the comments down below. That way you'll be able to look at them, see if it's something you really want to get into. Toolboxes, they're to secure your actual tools. Now, you don't have to buy a Snap-on down day one. I didn't. I actually had a used toolbox that I used for quite a while that I purchased off my dad for almost nothing. And it was just one small rollaway. So this is the rollaway section, and this is a up top box on it. You can always add in or upgrade. So this is something that will secure your tools. It locks. That way, hopefully nobody messes with your tools. But always make sure that you keep the tools clean as you put them back in. If you do get a little bit of oil inside of it, hopefully the toolbox comes with some liners. That makes it a little bit easier. And I recommend that you have your tools in the bottom. So like your hammers, your tools that you're they're a little bit heavier, and as the drawers go up, you start putting in lighter and lighter stuff as you go up. That way, and also make sure that your like torque wrenches are not sitting with your hammers. You can see what might happen. You could damage the torque wrenches because you just threw a hammer in the bottom and you just smacked up against a torque wrench, which torque wrenches tend to be more expensive than regular wrenches. I should say regular, wrenches, and also ratchets along the way too. All right, so getting into specialty tools, there are different types of specialty tools. I put really that should be a shop tool, not a specialty tool. And oh man, I just really swallowed something. Anyways, this is more what a shop would provide. I just wanted to get a prequel to when I'm going to do a video on alignment equipment and stuff like that too. I'm going to try to do, I'm going to do videos on different types of equipment that you might be using in the shop. But there's different types of specialty tools that you might want to have in your toolboxes, like seal pullers and drivers, test lights, soldering guns, wire snippers, wire crimpers, and also get into some multimeters. When I get into my electrical section, I'm going to start showcasing some electrical tools too. So here is a seal remover. This is something that if you're doing like axle seals, seal puller would be great. And anytime you pull a seal, you want to replace it. Don't try to use it over, because when you're pulling it, you generally will damage it and it's not going to seal like it should anymore. Seal drivers, or this one's actually showing a boot driver, and pretty same principle for seal drivers, but they can come in plastic or steel. And this is actually for an actual disc brake caliper. And this is one style here also. Here I have a test light, and the test lights come in different sizes, different types, let's put it that way. This is actually a incandescent one, which you've got to be careful using these type of test lights when it comes to computer circuits. You can actually damage them. So there's actually special tools for getting into computers and stuff like that. And these will only show you there's available voltage. It won't tell you how much. And I'll get down to specialty tools as we go on to electrical too. And then of course you have, when you get into your soldering guns, and there's different types. There's the electrical ones that you plug into the wall. I'm not a big fan of this. I'm more of a I use my soldering bench, which actually has a soldering iron, not a gun like you see here. This is a gun. My soldering iron is more of like this shape, but it's electrical too, and I can adjust the temperature to a exact range to keep that iron at. This is a butane one that you can actually use, really portable, and it makes it kind of nice when you you don't have to drag out the long plug or anything like that to actually do it. This you can actually do by just firing it up and getting it to a heating temperature, and then do your soldering work. One little tip that actually I didn't invent, but it was actually introduced to me, which I thought was really great, is if you ever use fender covers, the fender covers tend to fall off, especially cars that are really waxed up. And a lot of times they have little pockets down in the bottom, and really it gets a little bit crazy there. But the fenders fall off, the fender covers fall off. This is a cool little trick that somebody taught me some time ago, that you can actually use like a little binder clip and connect it to like a metal edge on the fender. And this will be not on the top of the fender, but inside, and this will keep it in place. It'll be a good idea to have a few of these in your toolbox to keep the fender covers on. And remember, always use fender covers. All right, so a little bit of safety tips for using hand tools. Always pull the wrench towards yourself when you're breaking, trying to get something loose, or you're actually tightening it up, because if you slip off, you're just going to hit yourself. But if you are pushing this out, like, putting all kinds of force on it, and if you slip, or if it comes loose all of a sudden, and there's some metal, because in the cars we have some metal, areas, like if on the fender, they have some areas on it that really can cut you. You want to make sure that you avoid that at all costs. So always remember to pull towards you, okay, or pull towards you when you're tightening, and pull towards you when you're trying to loosen up. Keep your hand tools clean at all times. As you put the hand tools back in, even when you're using them, it's a good idea to have a rag to wipe them down a little bit, but clean them up, put them back in your toolbox and put them in an organized fashion. Try to use 6-point sockets as much as possible, especially when you're using a breaker bar to loosen up a fastener. Use the box end wrench for torquing and an open end wrench for speed stuff. In other words, to get it off a little bit faster. Always replace any tool that has damaged or worn. Make sure you fix worn stuff like your ratchets, or if it's damaged, it's time to replace that. And if you get a good warranty on your tools, some of the higher end tool companies have warranty on certain tools, so you want to take advantage of that. And hand tool maintenance, like I said before, always keep them clean, put them away in a separate, like I said before, you don't want to put your torque wrenches with your hammers, and remove the tension from the torque wrench and secure your toolbox. Some shops actually have that place. After the end of the day, they take their toolboxes and they put it in a certain area. If not, get it up against the side of a wall and kind of secure it. So, and make sure it's locked. That always helps. That way you'll have your tools for a long, long time. All right. That's all I have for you right now. If you have any requests, thoughts, concerns, please leave a message down below and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. All right, folks, talk to you soon. Bye for now.